host. Today's conversation is all about childcare. And this has been a conversation that we've been having for all the decades I've been in workforce, and we still continue to strive for solutions and answers. Um, my role here at the Columbus Chamber is Vice President of Workforce and Workplace Innovation. And it really gives me great pleasure to see so many of you here today to participate in this conversation. But before we get started and before we bring up our expert panel, I would like to thank our sponsors who, without their help and support, we couldn't provide content like today. Um, GBQ, Western Governors University, Medical Mutual, Sedgwick, Jobs Ohio, Acclache, and all of our investor partners. Your support again is invaluable in fostering these important conversations. Now it's my great pleasure to welcome Barbara Smoot, President and CEO of Weld, representing WGU this morning.
Thank you, Kelly. I appreciate the warm welcome and many thanks and appreciation to GBQ for hosting us here today. Today, I'm representing WGU as a member of the advisory board for the Ohio region. WGU is a nonprofit accredited online university founded over 25 years ago to expand access to high quality, workforce relevant education. Today, we serve nearly 200,000 students across the country. Our model is flexible, affordable, and competency based, designed to meet learners where they are and help them move at their own pace. Here in Ohio, WGU serves 6,452 students and growing, many of them who are adults like you, balancing jobs, families, and school. A significant portion are parents, and for them, access to affordable, reliable childcare directly impacts whether they can pursue or complete their degrees. Even though WGU is fully online, childcare still matters. How many of you have tried to do something with a 2-year-old running around the house behind you? You can't study, take an exam, or do clinical hours if you don't have safe care for your children. In Ohio, especially, where many rural and urban areas face childcare shortages, this becomes a real barrier to education and workforce participation. I am fortunate that my children were able to go to City Kids, and they are represented here today. They took care of all three of my kids who are 34, 30, and 27, so they know all the horrors behind the Smoot household. If you're serious about growing Ohio's skilled workforce and closing equity gaps in education, we have to address childcare access as a key part of the solution. If people don't have anyone to take care of their children, they cannot go to work. We're proud to be part of the conversation like this that recognizes the full picture of what learners need to succeed. And we welcome collaboration with policymakers, employers, and community organizations to build the kind of support systems like accessible childcare that make education truly accessible for everyone. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to go ahead and welcome Sarah Robinson from GBQ. And one other comment, there's some WGU swag on the table. We hope that you will take it on the way out because it will lighten what I have to carry back to my van. So thank you. Sarah, thank you so much for all that you do, not just here in GBQ, but also in the community. You're everywhere, and we're grateful for your leadership.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Sarah Robertson. I am a partner here at GBQ. I'm also a board member at the Chamber, so I'm very excited to welcome you all to our offices this morning and to Experience Series. I'm very excited about today's topic. For those of you who are first-time attendees at GBQ, we are a top 100 accounting firm. You are sitting in our headquartered office here in Columbus, Ohio. We also have offices in Cincinnati and Toledo and Indianapolis. So welcome. Childcare isn't just a family concern. It's a workforce imperative shaping Central Ohio's participation, retention, and growth. This morning, you'll hear concise data-driven insights and practical strategies that on what's working here at home and what we can adapt from national models. I would now like to pass it back to Kelly Fuller to begin our program and introduce the panel.
Hey, panel, will you join me up here at the table, please? We're waiting to see the order. Here we go. Natalie. I'm a little bit OCD. So I'm actually kind of a lot. Um, so again, thank you guys for joining us this morning. I'm just going to go down the line, starting immediately to my right with Mark, and I'll just ask you if you would just introduce yourself, tell us where you work, and why you do what you do.
Hi, everybody. My name is Mark Salvaggio, and I work here at GBQ. I'm a director in our tax and business advisory practice, and I do what I do because I truly enjoy businesses helping businesses comply and navigate the tax landscape. And so that's some of what I want to talk today about is some of the childcare. Um, Incentives or cost offsets that are being offered by the government currently. So that's my
Good morning. I'm Lynn Gutierrez. I'm the president and CEO of Groundwork Ohio. We are the state nonpartisan nonprofit early childhood research and policy organization. We focus on championing policies in the first 5 years of life, so that unique prenatal to five period of time where 90% of brain development is happening. We're a cross issue agency. Anything that impacts families with young children, we work on. Childcare is a big part of that work. Why our mission? First, we're trying to get public policy to match brain science, how we invest in our youngest children and families, both as an investment in our current and future workforce. And we're building an early childhood movement across the state to hold state policymakers accountable to the needs of working families with young children. Our work exists to be that pipeline from local communities to state policymakers.
My name is Becky Simonello with the YMCA of Central Ohio. I am the Senior Vice President of Youth Development, which means that I lead the work that we do for children ages 0 to 17. Many of you may not know, but the YMCA is the largest child care provider in Central Ohio. Oh, also in Ohio and nationally. We actually have 87 licensed childcare centers here in Central Ohio. Those are full day centers serving kids 0 to 5, half and full day preschool, Head Start, and before and after school care, as well as summer programming. Our goal is to serve working families year round because we know the challenges. And I've been with the Y for 36 years. That's going to date me, but I'm in this work because I have a passion for children and families and helping them through this difficult time, and making sure that people understand that childcare is economic infrastructure, and it's not just a family issue, it's all of our issues.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Natalie Atkins, and I have to behave. They put Becky and I next to each other. She's one of my board members at Action for Children. So, at Action for Children, we transform the lives of children by empowering and advocating for them on behalf of the adults in their lives, their parents, their caregivers, and their teachers. Why I do this work? Well, like most of us in nonprofit, we just fall into it. I came from the corporate world and starting in human services, locally at St. Stephen's Community House, and then coming over to Action for Children. And before I started Action for Children, I wasn't a parent. I'm only 6 months in. And I've realized that this work, and it's been said already on this panel, it is truly is infrastructure, and we need to start including that language when we're talking about childcare.
You. Thanks, all of you. I'm gonna to open up the question. I'm gonna start with you, Becky, and then anybody else who wants to jump in, please feel free to do so. Becky, talk to us, if you will, about the current landscape of childcare here locally and nationally, and let's dive into as well availability and cost to the family.
Sure. The current landscape, both nationally and locally, I would say that childcare is essential and very fragile right now. There are three key factors to that. And just as Kelly said, affordability cost is probably the largest factor. Uh, childcare costs have increased 30% since 2020, since COVID. And Parents are paying 20 to 30% of their income on childcare expenses. I've heard many people say, and it's in research, that childcare has gotten to the point where it is the cost of college tuition, which that is that has to be really scary for working families, especially those who have more than one child, which is common. So, cost, I would say, is the first factor, and then availability. There are scarce slots available for families, especially with families who have infants and toddlers. It is very difficult. We at the Y say, many families come to us and say, "What do I do about childcare?" And we say, if you're thinking of having a child, put yourself on a wait list, because by the time that child arrives, you're going to need care, and so it's very difficult to find space. And just there's childcare deserts, and I know that Natalie is going to expand on that, but it's very challenging. And then the third key factor is we're in a workforce crisis, and the childcare workforce is the workforce behind the workforce. So that is challenging for everyone. The early learning world, our staff are so committed, but it's so low paying, and it's high stress and high turnover. So like I said, we're in a crisis. And when our vocation is in a crisis, it puts a lot of other folks in crisis. Uh, Not to be totally negative, because I just want to say that it's so good to see conversations like this, because it gives us all hope that people are understanding that this is a problem for everyone and we all have to find solutions.
Um, Thank you, Becky. Lana, did you want to go first? I know we're talking about the landscape and the availability and cost, but I'm going to read this stat directly because it's the cost of care, but there's also the thinking around the cost of not having childcare. And according to the Buffett Early Learning Childhood Institute, Central Ohio, so our region, is looking at a range of 388 to $591 million in economic loss due to childcare gaps impacting household, businesses, and tax revenues. And I know there's a lot of accountants in the room, and that is a loss that can be felt not just here in our region, but statewide and then nationally. So I just wanted to bring that into that conversation as well. I don't know if Lydia, if you want to.
No, that tracks with the work. We've done some work with the Ohio Chamber on Ohio's economic loss. So the state of Ohio loses $5.48 billion as a result of childcare barriers. So those numbers track certainly with this region. I was going to build on some of Becky's comments, sort of beyond affordability. Which, by the way, on average in the state, infant care is between $14,000 and $15,000 a year. But in Central Ohio, I'm also a mom of three young children, and my last one was my surprise grand finale. So I was on a wait list for over a year. My baby's no longer almost no longer a baby, but that was for $1,900 a month here in Central Ohio. So and I have three under 7. So it's just really imperative. But in terms of the current landscape, I wanted to add on in terms of advocacy awareness. We just did some recent polling in the past couple weeks, and the good news is that voters, 80% of Ohio voters, identify childcare as a major problem or a crisis. So there is a high level of awareness that even when they're not parents themselves experiencing it, that this is a community and a state problem. Certainly that increases in terms of awareness when you look at parents of young children. And there's also awareness of voters. Almost 60% are aware or identify this direct link between the childcare crisis and the workforce crisis, saying that they or someone they know would go back to work if they had access to quality, affordable childcare. So that's just some recent data we did to help bolster and support conversations actually at the federal level in DC. But the two themes I would just add is there's the most awareness we've ever had, which is like, evidence of the different folks coming together in this room having this conversation. And we have the most threats we've ever had. So it's both the threats around sustainability of public investment that hang our state system and the balance. It's underfunded. It's been funded on in large part on one-time federal dollars. And I'll tell you, there's a $600 million gap we have to backfill next state budget just to maintain the status quo with no more families added and having access. And high note, there's this incredible period state in the state and nationally of innovation where businesses are trying to figure out and employers are trying to figure out what is the private sector role. No, they cannot do it alone, and neither can the public sector, but really experimenting and learning and understanding what is their ROI in terms of investing in their employee child care, both in the short term for parental workforce and the long term for the future workforce. So I ended with a positive too.
And I would echo, I mean, my oldest baby is 36 this year. And I was chatting with Barb before. We had that same experience in Chicago 36 years ago, having to get on a wait list a year ahead of time. And when you think about a typical pregnancy being 9 months or less, you really have to be planning. And then you have the fear of losing that slot, and starting over again. So this has been obviously an issue for decades, but the positive, as you just mentioned, Lynn Ann, is that we are having these conversations, especially in this region, as we continue to grow, and project all the investment coming in. We have a lot of employers in the room. Let's Natalie, I'm going to start with you on this one, and then again, anyone who wants to jump in. Um, let's talk about our working parents, our working families, and what are some of the challenges that they're experiencing that we may know about as employers or we may not be aware of. And let's talk as well about some local resources that can help meet those challenges.
Thanks, Kelly. I feel like I'm gonna be talking for a minute, so someone's gonna have to give me the sign. Thank you. Just stop talking. So challenges. It's been said, so I'll just reiterate that affordability is number one. It costs a lot to send your children to childcare. And when thinking about cost, you have, parents sitting at, the kitchen table doing their budgets and thinking, is it worth for me to stay in the workforce when my entire paycheck is going to pay for childcare? And more than likely, it's the woman that will stay home from work, which then perpetuates loss in the workforce, and then loss of upward mobility when it comes to her career. And those are difficult decisions, that families face every single day on top of housing, transportation, rising food costs. It's just one more thing that families are dealing with on a daily basis, especially now when prices continue to rise. You may not think that tariffs have an impact on your child care facility, but when you're thinking about supplies and added costs and overhead, I mean those things start to add up. I know there's some providers in the room, and I'm seeing a lot of shaking heads, and those things do add up. On top of that, when we're talking about costs, I think this is important, an important stat to say. In Central Ohio, we've heard the number from Linan, the cost. Um, Folks are paying anywhere between 12 and 34% of their income, of their household income on childcare. That's crazy. When the federal average is 7%, 7%. So we do need to be having these conversations are great, but Linan is our, we're all advocates up here, but I'm gonna give her props because she does a lot of the hard work. But it's taking these conversations out of this room and having conversations internally with your workforce. How can we support you, your workforce? You know this. Your workforce is your biggest asset. And so when you're thinking about your asset, how can we, invest in, build up? And a lot of that's looking at, what's happening at home. Businesses, are not geared to be social service agencies. That's what folks like us at Action for Children do. And we can be a partner, with you in helping your workforce with these issues. And I'll go into that in my second round. But thinking about that, when we're talking about ROI, there are You can do a quick Google search on what is the ROI on investing in childcare for the workforce, and I think it will surprise you. I know there's some data out from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce that published some really good data on that. But it is a great conversation. If you're not already having it, start having it. Um, yeah.
Wanted to make 2 comments, and then we'll jump right back in. Um, so you indicated, Natalie, that we do have some providers in the room. If you are a provider in this space, can you identify so we know who to talk to? Welcome and thank you for being here and thank you for all you do. Just a reflection on something that you shared. When you were talking about, people having to make that difficult decision about, do I continue, going into or being employed, or do I step out of the workforce? One of the things, this is anecdotal, but I'm sure there's some statistics around it. I know early in 2020, I had a lot of friends my age that were grandparents, that women specifically, that stepped out of the workforce early because the fear was their adult child would, their career would be taken off track, but someone needed to provide that childcare for the children. And now some of those women are trying to get back into the workforce, which has become a challenge. So it really is a multi generational conversation as well.
I would love to share a story. So, um, just to reiterate what Natalie was talking about the challenges for working families. First of all, I cannot imagine what it would be like to be a working parent at this point. I do have 3 daughters. They were all under 5 when I was working, but and there were a lot of challenges back then too. But now my grown children are experiencing the challenges of today, which like I said, I it's tough to navigate and it's hard to watch. I had a colleague give me a call recently, and it really struck me because it was so sad. His assistant was doing phenomenal. She was working hard. She was a single mom. She was doing everything right. So he was so excited to give her a raise. He said, "Becky, she's awesome. I'd love to give." I thought she'd be super excited, and what that mom did is she said, I so appreciate the raise, but if I take it, it's gonna put me over the cliff." And in the childcare world, the cliff is you go from paying $50 a week to $250 a week if you make over 200% of the poverty level, which in this market is not difficult to do. And how sad is that? This person was working hard, trying to make her way for her and her child. And if she took a raise, then it would mean that she lost her ability to qualify for several subsidy for publicly funded childcare, but a myriad of other support systems too. Um, that is a reality. So I would say that's also a challenge. You have to balance that affordability, the availability, and quality care. But those are real people with that are experiencing that. And like I said, the why is was able to help because we have extended resources beyond childcare. We were able to help her with housing, which meant that she could then um, afford the higher cost of care. But that is not a normal situation. So again, I just wanted to share a personal story about that because that hit me hard.
Yeah, I'll add on because you inspired me with your story. One story that sticks with me that brings in sort of another layer of this is we were working with a family who was an excellent advocate. She had 4 children. She has 4 children, and her and her husband were both seeking to work. Her husband was working at Donato's, making about $17 an hour, and she was working with her local JFS to get back into a training program to become a childcare professional because she became an educated advocate. And she said, "I'm going to be part of the solution. Like I'm going to dedicate my career and my retraining to helping solve this crisis." And because she couldn't find childcare in her community, she then couldn't participate in the training program to become an early childhood professional, which, by the way, only makes on average $15 an hour across the state. So, oh, it's just the kind of levels of pain is, yeah, it's hard.
Um, Mark, I'm going to turn to you for a second. Excuse me. What are we seeing currently in the law and or tax code changes here in our state of Ohio that'll impact childcare and working parents or caregivers?
Yeah. So just zooming out to the broad landscape from federal and state as well. So back in July, the Tax Act was passed, sometimes referred to as the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. Kind of hard to say it with a straight face, but it had some notable increases in supports for childcare and for working families. So the child care tax credit, and I'm going to throw some numbers out at you guys because I'm a CPA and that's what I do. But I would encourage anyone who works with businesses, or if you are a business that is currently or considering expanding your what you offer to your employees in the way of childcare or FMLA leave, um, please reach out to your tax advisor if you haven't already, or reach out to GBQ because these are very complex things to navigate. And so, more than happy to have a more detailed conversation based on specific circumstances. The child care tax credit. So before the act was 25% of costs could be claimed as a credit by the employer. Costs paid for employees' childcare. 25% could be claimed. Now that's gone up to 40%. If you're a small business, that's gone up to 50%, and that's a cap of $500,000 of a credit per year, or if you're a small business, 600,000 a year. So if you do the math on that benefit, or that implies like an annual spending up to $1.2 million per year to support your employees. So that's fairly meaningful, and that is permanent, and that is indexed for inflation. One thing I'll say, I mentioned it, it's up from 25%, came into effect in 2017. So obviously there was Republican control back then. In the interim, there's been a Democratic administration with a Democratic trifecta. They were not seeking to claw back any of these credits. So that's a very good sign that this is a bipartisan area of agreement to leave these credits in place. Um, there's a number of different qualifications for the types of payments you make. That's where reach out to discuss it. But that's a meaningful, I think, cost sharing, 40 to 50%. Um, the other one is paid FMLA leave. And so if you offer your employees at least 50% of their wages paid during FMLA qualified leave, you can get a credit of 12.5% of those wages paid. Um, that goes up, that kind of scales up until you get to, if you offer 100% of wages paid, then you can get a 25% credit on those wages paid. And that also can apply to premiums that you pay for short-term disability insurance if that's the way that you offer that benefit to your employees. So a couple of meaningful credits, again, do reach out on that aspect. And then the final one I wanted to highlight was the dependent care assistance program, and that's I'd say a fairly common one that employers can offer. It's kind of a suite of different benefits. That cap used to be $5,000, and going forward, that's going to be raised to $7,500 of essentially income that the employee can exclude or deduct from their taxable income. So a little bit of a benefit to the employee there. It doesn't usually doesn't approach the entire cost, but certainly every little bit helps. So again, I would encourage everyone who is currently offering these benefits or is considering offering these benefits to reach out to your tax advisor, your accountant, or to GBQ. Happy to have the conversation. Lynn Ann and I were talking a little bit about a sort of exciting new program that Ohio is rolling out. You may be a little bit better versed than me, but
Yeah, sure. No, thanks. I love learning about the tax details, but I want but before I do, can I share too? There also is an increase in the CDTCT, Child Dependent Care Tax Credit for families. So it's a modest increase, but it hadn't been updated for a long time. So sort of this package together, I think there's a lot of hope around it. And from an advocacy learning perspective, as we all sit in this room, providers and advocates alongside business leaders at the national level and at the state level, this was a partner this success, this, I would say, very bright point in HR1 was because there was national and state business leadership and early childhood leadership who came together and said, we're not going to let this a tax package go by without thinking about young children and families. And so while I don't say it, I wouldn't sit here to say it overshadows some of the devastating cuts in Medicaid and others. It was an example where if we work together and prioritize, we can make this progress for families. The program that we're talking about is Childcare Cred. In other states, it's known as TriShare. So there was bipartisan support and across both the Ohio Senate and the Ohio House for a program where essentially the cost of childcare would be split three ways between employer, employee, and the state of Ohio. And the state of Ohio determined that that share would be 40% on the employee, 40% on the employer, and 20% coming from state investment. There is $10 million invested in this first state fiscal year of the budget, so July 1 to June 30 of 2026, to put out as much money into the community to get this partnership up and running and see where businesses and employees can really partner with costs. There's an active application on the Department of Children and Youth website that we could follow up with a link with. Um, I think a lot of employers are thinking about potentially using it because it is 1 year of state funding. So you're going to have to think about how that may sustain. But asking your employees, who are those employees who would benefit? They have to be between 200% and 400% of the federal poverty level, so not otherwise eligible for publicly funded childcare, under 200% of the federal poverty level. And a lot of employers, I've heard them thinking about it as a recruitment tool. So could we bring someone on and say, we will pay for 40% of 6 months of your childcare in terms of a recruitment tool. So I think there's a lot of learning, and it's sweetened the pot in 2026 with increasing for the tax to 40%. So you can
right.
kind of talk about that connection.
Just really quickly, so you, thank you both for giving us so much detail and great information, and we will have some links following up as well, so that everyone can have access. But I'm wondering if any of you know, Lynn Ann, you mentioned the TriShare model that I think some of our neighboring states have been participating in. Do we have any data from them, or any kind of observations about how successful that's been? Because they're a little bit ahead of us in that game.
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of data beginning to be tracked, but in this area, there's no like smoking gun solution that it's like, this is the thing. You have to really dig in and iterate on what works business by business, provider by provider, family by family. And that's the excitement of the work and the challenge of the work. In other states, this specific model has looked a little bit different, meaning the state has actually invested a little more. So it was shared three ways equally between employer, employee, and the state. In Kentucky, I'm sorry, in Michigan, Kentucky, and other states, they definitely have seen success. It's a slow on ramp, meaning like we have to market this program. You have to have business who understand this challenge, get specific with their employees about what is the demand among their employees and where connecting that demand with this particular benefit would make the most sense. So my concern, we're super happy to have this investment in the state budget. My concern is how do we get that out quickly in this one state year, because any new program, as you're learning, takes time. But there's certainly learning with success. And for the childcare providers in here, that's available to you as businesses too. So you as the employer. So don't set yourself aside as a non-employer in this instance. You employ as well. And we've seen in Michigan in particular, many of the businesses who take up the childcare, their tri-share childcare credit in their state are childcare providers, because then they can, especially if they already may be saying, hey, if you come work with us, you can have free child or discounted childcare. They could get the benefit of that as well.
I think in regards to data, what I'm really excited about and to see the data come out is from New Mexico. If you don't know already, New Mexico was the first state in the nation to pass universal childcare, regardless of income. Yes, snaps from New Mexico. Um, so I'm excited, over the next year, 5 years, to see what the impact of that is. You know, um, Even when it comes to the workforce, yes, I have some partners here from Future Ready, who's our partner in kindergarten readiness and that work. I'm excited to see what that does for children in that space as well. So
Very exciting news. I think we'll all kind of be watching and, to monitor what's happening there. Um, I'm wondering too, and anyone can jump in on this to start and then continue to contribute, but what else can employers do? Are there some creative things, beyond, what we've just talked about, but in order to help their employees meet those demands of childcare and, beyond the expense part of it, what else can employers do, especially some of our smaller employers?
I forget who's starting.
I'll go, I guess. um, Well, Kelly, that's a great question. I would love to answer. Um, so, what can small businesses do? Well, when we're thinking about businesses that are like just starting out, operating just like childcare centers on razor thin margins, you would love to be able to provide childcare or any other large benefit to your employees, but that is a cost to your bottom line. Um, what I would recommend, self-serving plug here, is to reach out to your local R&R or your local nonprofits to help your employees, especially if you have hourly employees that may qualify for PFCC or might just be over that. They're looking for other supports. At Action for Children, we offer a wide variety of parental supports, not just we support our childcare providers with technical assistance, business supports, ongoing training. However, we also support parents when it comes to any type of parental support. So that can include if you have an employee that's going through a divorce or a separation from their partner. Learning how to parent separately is a muscle that not everyone expects to be able to stretch. Action for Children is here to help you with that. Also, dads. Um, Dads are a huge part, obviously, in a family unit, and a lot of dads may not be as involved as they would like to be in just re-entering into the family ecosystem. Action for Children has a wonderful program called Father Up that helps empower dads. So, what I would say for those small businesses is to see where your partners are in the nonprofit space that can walk alongside your employees to make sure that your employees come to work as their full self, and we can help them lessen that burden for other things. But as far as like other, that I'll stop there because I'm sure.
So the way kind of groundwork has come to think about this on the continuum of what employers could do, I will share with this business case for childcare with you after the panel. But we talk about sort of explore solutions. So first, I think you have to ask. I know sometimes there's, and I'm an employer too, this hesitancy if you ask the team, ask your employees what you need, then you have to deliver on that feedback that you get. I think you have to be brave enough to ask and get specific about what the needs of families are, and making sure that it's getting beyond kind of the human resource level and to the executive level, so that there's this shared understanding across the business about what the challenge is. Because if you get specific about what the challenge and the need is, then you can get specific about the solution. So some of the solutions I call, and they're good solutions, but it's sort of working around the childcare crisis, which is What does schedule predictability look like for families? Job sharing, flexible scheduling. Like, is there an easy fix that you can just make on your end that allows that parent to come to work? Then I would say the next level is really investing in a childcare solution. So, for some large businesses, this is likely not going to work for many, but certainly on site childcare is an investment. It meets the need of some of the demand of the employees on a larger campus. Um, what is often seen, I think, is really successful is partnering with local childcare providers who are the experts of their work, who know their business, who know the work, and know how to care for kids and families, and prioritizing investing in them to prioritize slots for your employees, and thinking and working with them and innovating around a partnership with a local childcare provider, where you can reciprocate those benefits. Um, Certainly there's also just again like financial incentives that we talked about, that now have this increased tax benefit. And finally, from my perspective, is that whether you're a small business or a large business, when you get into this, you're going to very quickly realize that you are part of the solution and you are not the only part of the solution as a business leader. And you are going to quickly become an advocate, because without a strong public partner, federal, state, and local, we are not going to be able to try to solve this crisis alone. So the water is warm. And I think even where you're asking your employees and you can't meet the need, you can't invest in their solutions now, if they see you raising your voice or amplifying your voice to advocate on their behalf to close this gap in the community, they will really respect that. We work with families all the time across the state who tell us their needs, and they are in crisis right in front of us, and they do not expect systems change overnight, but they do want you to close the feedback loop and want to know what you're doing to incrementally chip away at this challenge. So you can always be an advocate. Those are my answers.
Lynn, I want to kind of dovetail a bit off of what you just said, because it's going to lead into the next question, which I'm going to toss over to Becky to start us off. But it really is about collaboration, right? And whatever seat I'm sitting in, business owner, business leader, care provider, employee advocate, we all have to kind of work together in that space and recognize the strength in our role. There's some exciting news coming, some really great things around collaboration locally. Becky, do you want to share a little bit about what's happening with the Y?
Sure. Um, just as everyone said, that in this landscape, collaboration is key. Truly, most all of our YMCA centers are with partnerships and collaborations. We collaborate with 14 different school districts for before and after school care. We collaborate with Franklin County Board of DD and Logan County Board of DD for full day center care, as well as the state of Ohio for center care, uh, and a myriad of other community partnerships. Collaboration is key. I want to share a really exciting partnership that is still a proposed partnership. We still have some agreements that need to be made, some approvals, but you may have read in the Columbus Dispatch that we have a new partnership with potential partnership with Columbus State Community College. Columbus State looked at four barriers to graduation. Childcare was the number one barrier. There's food insecurity, housing, and transportation are also barriers. But to eliminate those barriers, Columbus State reached out to the YMCA, and if the proposal goes through, we will build a new facility, a new YMCA, a downtown YMCA on campus, and we will be operating their intramural program, as well as their just a fitness facility, a wellness facility. Some of those colleges associated with that will take place at the Y. But what's most exciting to me is that we will provide free licensed childcare drop in for students. So that barrier hopefully will be eliminated. Kids can, yes, thank you. We're super excited. Um, if a student has a class from 9 to 11 in the morning, they can drop their child off, and we are expecting all age groups, 6 weeks through school age, and They can pick them up after class and then drop them back off for another class. It's free care up to 5 hours a day, and that is through research of how many hours a day that parents are in class. So that type of partnership, thinking out of the box, is what's going to get us to that next step, that solution. So we're so excited to be a part of that. And again, realizing that childcare is an economic infrastructure and eliminating barriers so students can graduate and get into the workforce is huge.
I don't know if anybody else wants to weigh in on any other collaboration opportunities, but that's really an exciting offering, and hoping all goes well and that that materializes very quickly because it really is a workforce solution. I mean, if people can not only graduate and go into the workforce, trained and ready to go for all of our employers, but they're also probably going to be able to shorten the time that they have to be in school, which has implications all the way around with student loan debt and everything else. So I mean, that truly is an example of collaborating together with local resources. We'll all be watching that and rooting for that to happen for sure. I know it's really hard to predict, especially in the environment that we're in right now, but I'm going to ask this question of each of you. But what in the next 1 to 3, 5 years, what do you think? Um, what concerns you, but also what gives you hope about the state of childcare in Central Ohio? I'm going to start us off, Natalie.
Sure. Um, so Action for Children, we publish a report called the Central Ohio Child Care Provider Survey report. I think I'm looking at Wendy is our fifth year, sixth year, yeah, fifth or sixth year, doing this report, and I'm going to give you a little preview. We're in the middle of writing, and a stat stopped me in my tracks, and so that stat is, and you'll see this when this report is published in December. December, right? So 58%, 58. That's 58% of surveyed childcare providers stated that they are unsure if they will be open in 12 months. That is a 10% increase from last year. I'm going to let that sink for a second. That is a confidence indicator. And we all know that, the environment that we're in right now, especially providers, it's a little unstable. There's going to be changes when it comes to reimbursements for folks, and that's money that they would receive that goes to pay to keep the lights on, and they may not be able to do that. So that is my doom. My doom. Although I am hopeful, because we have, as Lynanne had mentioned, and this partnership that Becky had mentioned with initiatives on the state level with the child care tax cred, business partnerships as well, and in the local and the county level with Franklin County Rise. That is an initiative from the Board of Commissioners, specifically Commissioner Erica Crawley, and her initiative to have a full range of supports from scholarships for families that are over that cliff, as well as supports for educators. And it's those kinds of localized solutions that keep me hopeful.
What keeps me hopeful is conversations like this. We've been talking about childcare and the issues that surround it for families, for businesses, for years. And I love to see people gathered around the conversation. But I also want to really point out that right now we have state leadership that I trust as a provider. They have the leader of DCY, Kara Wente, and her team, Alicia Leatherman, and like I said, the whole team. They are very in touch with the provider. They're asking us what we think and how we will survive in the next over the next 5 years. Yes, there's difficult decisions that have been made, but I feel very confident about the folks who are looking out for providers at the state level right now. So that gives me a lot of hope.
Lynanne, so your best guess prediction and also what do you hang your hat on as far as hope?
So I already dropped my $600 million just to maintain the status quo and the childcare system in the state of Ohio. So that when I think about the landscape in the future, like that is a real thing. And either we're going to buck up and build the will and put people's money where their mouth is to help backfill that because we haven't done that incrementally over time. We've been working on this issue for the past decade. Um, and there's going to be certainly reverberations of that in local and the state community because any local dollars and innovation is typically a build on or like that last dollar into the state system. And so what but turning to what gives me hope is even though the threats have increased over time, there are more voices, there are more tools in our advocacy tool belt that we have now that we've never had before. And so continuing to grow that and mobilizing that gives me hope, both in the central Ohio community where I'm a resident, where I'm eager to see what is the will of the policymakers, of the people to come together to get new revenue, sustained revenue in this system, and also at the state level. Again, if we can't seek the solutions we need from the legislature or from the state government and current policymakers, there is the opportunity to bring voters to this issue, and voters feel really strongly about this issue. Um, the other thing on the horizon that I can't not say is we do have excellent state leadership. And all of those leaders are going to change. We have a gubernatorial election in November of 2026. So most of our work is now pivoted to focusing on how do we inform and influence whoever the next governor is in Ohio to make sure they have a platform for working families with young children that hopefully includes childcare and that they have a point of view. And we're taking any open door we can for all of the declared candidates just to try to educate them. And we need your voices to do that as well. So um, there's lots of opportunity where there is uncertainty and to innovate.
Mark, we'll wrap it up with you.
All right, thank you. I guess I would say that what gives me hope is that this truly is an area of bipartisan agreement, right? It's a humongous challenge. We've heard the numbers of the economic loss that this problem produces and the challenges that families and businesses face as a result. And that's been made apparent to policymakers in both parties, and so some really interesting solutions. More needs to be done, and I'll say that doesn't happen by accident, right? The other thing that gives me hope is the work of individuals just like the extraordinary people I'm sitting here with today. I'm certainly honored to be here, and your all's organizations and the work that you do, and that there are really, really good, smart people dedicating their lives to improving on this. Really, it gives me hope. So
I agree with that. This is the time in our conversation where I stop talking so much and give all of you a chance to make comments or ask questions. We have a fantastic panel here, obviously, today. So the way we'll do this is Elsa's going to give me a hand. If you've got a question, just raise your hand. Elsa's going to come around with the mic.
Hi there. Thank you so much. This has been great and very informative. I that confidence number terrifies me, and I'm curious. How are we supporting the independent providers that love children and have grown up through the daycare setting as a teacher and have decided to put a shingle out for themselves to help them be better business owners and maybe increase that confidence level that they're going to be successful and thrive versus just survive.
That is the question. That is the question. Um, what she's pertaining, or I'm assuming you're speaking directly about FCC providers, at home providers. So, um, childcare is a business. It's a business. It's also a school. But it is a business that is primarily ran by women. 95% of childcare business owners are women. And it is a passion, right? And they usually come into this work with that passion. They care about children, but they're not a marketer. They're not a cook. Maybe they're cook, but maybe not. They're also janitor. They're also accountant. They're also customer service. I mean, they wear so many hats. I don't know where they hang them. And so you see a lot of folks, especially here at Action for Children, where we do have a really strong focus when it comes to our FCC providers. Programs like the Village that bring FCC providers so they have a cohort together to have conversations and talk about things. And then we get into conversations around shared services. So, there has been a lot of talk about insurance. In our report, we usually have a section on health insurance, life insurance, and what that cost is for parents, and looking at cost sharing. Across providers, you do see that in some places, um, along with other types of business supports. Action for Children is what's called a childcare resource and referral agency. We are one of a very large network nationwide. We have sister agencies in across the state. Um, and part of that is business supports for providers. So, if they need ongoing training, technical assistance, we always talk about recognition, reward, and respect for our providers. And they need all of those R's. And when it boils down, so the short answer is there needs to be more money. Point blank, when it comes to operating programs like this on a nonprofit level, we need the dollars. And we see those dollars slipping away, and that impacts our family child care providers on a real level. So
So, Action for Children, they recently had like a lot of Action for Children had a lot of shifts in staffing, and some of the programs are closing down. How are they going to kind of support providers in the midst of the challenges that they're experiencing?
that is a great question. So what she's referring to is what I just alluded to is those funding cuts. Um, we are working tirelessly to find other ways of funding, but that work is still going to continue, just in a different way. So, like business operational supports of the BOSS program, which was pretty influential, that is still going to exist in some way, shape, or form. Those supports are still going to exist. They may not just be underneath that name. So providers still have access to us all the time. So
Just as an outside perspective, I just want to comment on you, Natalie, and Tasha Booker's leadership, and so just the utmost confidence there, and this recognition that you all are a nonprofit, Groundwork's a nonprofit, and as the squeeze happens, like we all need resources to be able to do our work. And I can make the upstream case of why advocacy is so important, but it doesn't detract from the need that this one single family provider on Smith Street also needs this thing over here. And so we're all trying to work together, but we're all being forced to right size our work where there's not that level, not the same level of investment, and it's very very concerning. So, for those business leaders and corporate partners that have the ability, please think about how you can also partner with these incredible nonprofits who are doing the systems work and supporting the systems here locally and across the state.
From a provider's perspective, these services are so key. I've been around a long time, and Action for Children has been along right alongside of us as a provider support. So just as Natalie and Lynanne said, these services are so key to providers. We rely on these services.
What programs are available for the providers to better prepare the children for kindergarten? Because I see a lot of times they struggle when they transition from the daycare to kindergarten. So, what programs are available for even staff training to better prepare the children for kindergarten?
Great question. I already gave her a shout out. Sorry, Erin, you're the future ready representative here. Um, so um, there are multifaceted ways in those supports. Um, Future Ready, alongside with Action for Children, have been doing, coaching, one-on-one coaching and ongoing coaching. And then we also have that CDA credential to help, build up that education for providers, which then in turns helping providers become uh, better educators so that they can then educate their students so that they become kindergarten ready, right? You can't expect, to throw a teacher in a room and say, yes, do all the things and make sure they succeed on, I'm gonna drop an acronym, the KRA, right? Make sure they do all of that. Make sure they get my homeworks. And that is, they're doing that with one hand tied behind their back, right? And so they need the ongoing technical assistance. And that's where folks like Action for Children, Future Ready, especially here in Franklin County, team up to help the provider. And then too, when thinking about going home, right? That education needs to continue at home. And so when you have parents, making sure that they can become their child's first and best teacher, and that's something that that Action for Children also does with our Spark program to make sure that that lesson is still continues at home. Even in the K through 12 space, you have that summer gap, when you have, I remember when I was in school we had to read I don't know how many books during the summer, but it's the same kind of practice, right? That it needs to continue.
I think this is a good point to make too for the business leaders in the room because I get asked a lot like, childcare costs so much. Like, isn't there a way to make this more efficient? And like, just a reminder, parents will not go to work if they don't feel their child is safe and cared and loved. I don't care what economic level they are. They will make the toughest decisions. And so the idea that from a funding perspective or a policy perspective, this isn't just babysitting. Children's brains are being built whether we nurture them or not. And so, especially during these first 5 years. So, just a note that we like at this point, we can't do it any cheaper. We can't pay childcare professionals any less, and we cannot relent on basic, not especially basic safety. One thing that comes up often is ratios. Just so you know, the ratio for infant care in Ohio at for licensing is 1 to 5 babies or 2 to 12. I drop my daughter off every morning, and I'm just telling you, I feel like it's too much every day. But if you think to make it more efficient or more affordable that we should just put more babies in a classroom, like these are not widgets, these are not products, these are our future, community members, workforce. These are our most valuable resources. So just want to pick up on that it's not just one or the other.
It's okay. That's a great question. Thank you. I wanted to piggyback on the kindergarten readiness piece as well as the quality. Um, we have taken advantage as a provider for the YMCA has taken advantage of all the supports that are given by Action for Children, Future Ready. Really, there's a lot of PD to help teachers educate the children. Early education is so very key. Um, the kindergarten readiness scores in Ohio and in Franklin County are in the 30%. 30% of kids are ready, 30 to 35% of kids are ready for school when they get there. Utilizing the supports that are available, we've been able to obtain a 91% kindergarten readiness rate. And that took the community to do that. The Y took advantage of, and we've been able to do that. So that is key. And when you talk about quality, Ohio's quality initiative is Step Up to Quality, and it is something you can participate in. It If you serve kids that take that are eligible for publicly funded childcare, you're required to participate in Step Up to Quality. It is quality benchmarks that you reach, and there is a bronze status, a silver status, and a gold status. And every rating requires a little bit more in regard to ratios, curricula, and just PD. There's a lot of benchmarks related to that, but ensuring that we do our part from 0 to 5. It's very interesting. A lot of folks still have the thought that education starts at age 6 when they start school. That is so very not true. Education starts at infancy, and as Lynn Ann said earlier, 90% of the brain is developed between the ages of 0 and 5. So, investing in that age group and ensuring that your child is in a quality situation is so very key.
And just so there's great Ohio data, the kindergarten readiness, your readiness at kindergarten predicts third grade reading and math proficiency. In fact, it's more predictive of math than even literacy, but both they're highly predictive. And eighth grade math proficiency, high school graduation, college, or post secondary attainment. It's a direct link.
Thank you. I can't imagine being in your shoes, and you're dealing with problems that you didn't create and weren't in the room to be part of the discussion. As we look at, consider all the economic development that we have here and that's going on, that's going to create more jobs. Are you all at the table and invited to be at the table during those discussions so that we can try to prevent and avoid additional childcare deserts and crises?
Yeah. So, right, that's a great question. We are starting to, and that is because, again, like when I said in my opening statement, is that turning that conversation from childcare is just babysitting to childcare is infrastructure. And when we're talking with business leaders and what their workforce is, when Intel came in, Licking County itself is a desert, is a childcare desert. And we were worried because of the lack of licensed childcare. And we finally got an in with the Licking County Chamber of Commerce because we wanted to have these conversations with folks. So we're starting to. But Barb, if you know anybody, you just let me know. I'll go. All right.
First, I want to thank you guys for giving the information because we're the child care providers. We are 3 directors, and we've been with our schools 25 plus years. So we've seen it. Thank you. So we've seen it from every angle. And you've given us some helpful tips, I feel, too, when we raise rates to our parents to say, here's some opportunities to help support you because we're going to have to do that. But the other side of the coin, when you gave that 50%, 58%, is very scary because we are in that challenge to keep our staff. And again, we're very blessed, the 3 centers. We've kept staff 15, 20 years. And it's hard because they're not making enough money to sustain their life. And so the other side of the coin is yes, we have to help these parents, but we also have to help these child cares to keep these quality care. I have a degree from Purdue University, doesn't do me any good because we can't help these kids get any further. You know what I mean? So there's the other side of the coin of making sure that we can keep these teachers, awesome teachers, going so there is quality care.
You can, if you know more about it, go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes.
Yes. We've been fighting for that for a while.
I think both Barb and your question too is like, what are the state policy, what are the policy levers that require people to focus on that population? There are companion bills in both the Ohio Senate and the Ohio House focused on childcare for childcare professionals, so that they would have access to the subsidy, because not of their economic status, but because their status as childcare professionals. So again, what are all of the different creative ways we can get at supporting the really the broader compensation package for the childcare profession? But I guess I also just want to like underscore advocacy that policymakers need to hear from you, but also everybody in this room and business and community leaders who have a different voice, and who can get to different ears, because this work is just broadly undervalued because of who does the work, women, disproportionately women of color, and the policymakers who are elected are not reflective of these lived experiences. And I that's not I'm not passing judgment on that. I was just at an event last night and I was talking to a young man who's co-parenting a puppy, and he's an Ohio House representative, and so the opportunity there is he does not yet have any lived experience around childcare or the challenges with childcare. So there's a huge void to educating our policymakers about who and why this is so important, from all regardless of what walk of life you come from, political, geographic, economic. We've all heard a number of, acronyms and programs here today. And I think it's fair to say this group is well on the state, and some of these things are new to us. How do we raise awareness for the general community, parents and caregivers, guardians, about what is available and what's available specifically to them, those qualifiers?
That's a great question. Yeah. Um, this is a perfect example of how to educate um, the community, businesses, providers. We know our struggles, but it is nice to know that businesses are looking to us to help their business and to work with their families. Um, it right now, I do believe that childcare is more in the spotlight than it's ever been. We need to ensure that it's looked well upon, and that it's glaring how important it is. And I like I said, I think this is our time. This is our time to share that this we are the workforce behind the workforce. We are in economic infrastructure, and if I could shout it from the mountaintops, I would. But just getting the private and public partnerships together and listening is so very key. Do any of you have the magic answer of how to get the word out? I would love that.
It's not magic, but I mean, one of the top things we hear from families, and we have a family action network, so we have some direct relationships with families across the state and talk with them, is they don't know, like, every meeting they're in or every time they're engaging with another family member, which honestly isn't all the time. There's so much isolation. Like, they actually, if there's more community, they could help each other solve, like, we could help each other solve our own problems by making those connections. But they don't know what how they have access to, and they're so tired of navigating 10 different systems, 10 different programs, locations that they have to go to. And I think part of why there's this huge gap, is families aren't at the table when we're making up the alphabet soup and we're building the program. So it requires resources to help get them there. That work has to be resourced, but we're fighting to be at the economic development conversations, but then we have to pace set and make sure we're bringing in families to this decision making tables as well.
Would everybody join me in thanking our panel today? Great conversation, and many thanks to all of you for joining us. And we do hope you'll join us at another chamber event soon. We have a lot of them. Just check out our website. But As you're leaving today, not only have a great, safe, and wonderful travel beyond here, but be sure to stop at the desk. GBQ is so kind to validate parking should you have parked in the McConnell garage. So thank you all. Have a great day, and hopefully we'll see you soon.